all know a guy who only occasionally shaves for big occasions, and it's because that occasional shave really hurts. It's the time of year for big occasions, and yet there he is, suffering with that cheap drugstore razor. Let's help him out. Henson Shaving's line of razors, built with aerospace precision, deliver a smooth shave your dad, brother, and even son can enjoy, eventually. With replacement blades just 10 cents each, you'll buy it once, and they'll use it for life. How's that for the perfect gift? Celebrate with 100 free blades on your first purchase, and no subscription headaches. HensonShaving.com/holiday.
Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie.
And each week, we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird. Welcome to episode number 42 of History for Weirdos.
Woohoo! What's going on, weirdos?
We are so excited to be back for another episode. We took last weekend, Easter weekend, off. And before Andrew gets into the riveting, I'm sure,
oh my God,
episode that he has planned for us, we did want to thank 3 of our listeners in particular who really keep us motivated to keep creating these episodes because they have very generously provided patronage to this art.
Ooh, using some ancient Roman verbiage right there.
Yes, exactly. And so those 3 amazing supporters are, I'll just say their first names and their last initial, are Eva C., Tiffany W., and Molly P.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. That honestly means a ton to us. You have really no idea. Yeah. And also to everyone else, if you want to help financially support the show, there is a link in the show notes or just in the description of the podcast itself, wherever you're listening.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And that's across all types of podcasting platforms, wherever you listen. Mm-hmm. You can check it out there if you feel called to do so. You just listening means a lot to us, but of course the patronage helps us to keep going.
Exactly.
And creating some kooky content.
Kooky content.
For you all.
Yes.
So back to the kooky content, my love.
Actually, I just want to one quick thing as well.
Yes.
Our 50th episode is coming up, and we've gotten a lot of great questions so far, but we still, we obviously have room for a lot more. So please just keep on firing away. Whether you want to email us, you can do that.
Leave a comment on
Instagram or just DM us on Instagram. Whatever you guys want.
Any questions you have, you can ask us anything. It could be history. It could be about us. It could be about podcasting. Like literally anything that pops up. Just let us know and we will answer.
Yeah. 50th episode coming up relatively soon. Okay, so I guess now for the good part, right?
Yes.
Now I got some housekeeping out of the way. Okay, so today's story is interesting. It's going to be probably the most controversial one that we've done yet. Yes. Dun, dun, dun. I'm not going to be talking about a person or event. So this is possibly, I think, a History for Weirdos first.
It's not a person nor an event. I think you're right. Mm-hmm.
So
oh, no, we've done like the pagan Christmas traditions.
Oh, we did. Okay, never mind.
The Roman, where we get Valentine's Day from.
Oh, yes.
Celebration.
Yes. Okay. So this isn't a first. Well, anyways. Well, that's kind of an event, but
those
whatever.
Those are kind of events, though. Yeah, those are like holidays. So this is very unique.
This is kind of unique,
okay.
Yeah. So today's story is to honor a holiday that people celebrated this past week. Holiday, I use the term very loosely. Mm-hmm. Today's story is about the plant known as cannabis, aka marijuana, Mary Jane, hemp, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. And, we often associate this drug with like the 1960s and 70s.
Yeah.
But it's been around for far, far longer than that. In fact, botanists, believe it or not, believe that this plant has been around and been used by humans since around 10,000 BC.
Holy shit.
Yes. And of course, the early, history of this plant remains a little bit hazy to us.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, I had to, guys.
Some purple haze to us?
Yeah, I had to. I'm sorry.
10,000 BC.
10,000 BC, so like 12,000 years ago, and the plant has been around since like around like 40 million years ago, roughly.
It makes sense because humans have used plants for everything, right? Like think of, we domesticate plants all the time, like for our own use, for medicines, for energy, for intoxication.
Right.
We do that all the time. Coffee.
Yeah.
Arnica is like something that we use for pain. It's a plant.
Oh, yeah.
Arnica.
Arnica,
I think
you.
would be in English.
Thank you.
So that makes sense, but it's weird to think about it being that old.
Very old. I mean, in fact, just to give you guys reference, the Sumerians are probably the first group of cradle civilization, right? And the cannabis or use of cannabis was around 6,500 years before the start of Sumerian culture. 6,500 years before. So that gives you a little bit of perspective, right? This was the first, where it was, I think, thought to originate in terms of use. It's really hotly debated because this isn't even like history anymore. This is more anthropology because it's prehistory, right?
We're crossing genres.
We're crossing
here.
a little genres, yeah. The general consensus, or I shouldn't even say general, but one of the major consensuses is that it's from in or around the Altai Mountains near present-day the intersection of like Mongolia, China, Kazakhstan, and Russia.
So that's one of the theories as to where weed or like naturally grew.
Exactly.
Okay.
So like around there or a little bit farther south, kind of just generally like in that like the stands.
Yeah.
Where all the present day stands countries are.
Wow.
I love calling them the stands. So, but generally it's just like Central Asia.
Okay.
And what's interesting is that we know that it comes from around that area also because of linguistics.
Really?
Yeah, that's what's kind of cool. It's similar. The word is similar in a lot of different languages. So in Latin, it's cannabis, of course, where we get the English word.
So that's ours.
Obviously,
cannabis.
the pronunciation might be slightly different from 2,000 years ago, but it's cannabis. Greek, and it comes from the Greek word, which is even older. Very similar pronunciation as well. And this has spurned the Italian canapa or canapa and the Russian konopolia.
Okay.
And again, I apologize about my pronunciation, but I'm not a linguist, so I'm giving it my best shot, guys. Even non-Indo-European languages use related words, such as kinab in Arabic, a Semitic language, kandir in Turkish, and kanabis in Georgian, a Caucasian language.
That's nuts. It does sound similar.
Yeah,
it gives a similar vibe.
Right, and it's all Indo-European or non-Indo-European, it doesn't matter. Yeah. They all sound very similar.
Which does tell us how old it must be.
Yeah, and it just must have and generally
and cross-culturally.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these are thousands of miles apart.
That's nuts.
Yeah, the earliest known writing about the medicinal use of cannabis comes from China from around 2000 BC. I also did see one article stating 2900 BC, so I don't really, honestly, like when you get that far back in history, things kind of just honestly get a little bit cross-contaminated.
It's a big difference.
It's
in
a
time,
huge difference.
but it feels kind of like the same.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's about the same.
But imagine someone being like, "Oh, the year like 2000 or 1100."
It's
more
like or less the same.
More or less the same. It's like no,
not at all.
But Chinese farmers around the same time, around 2000 BC, began to grow it for oil and to make fiber for rope, clothing, and paper around this time.
Okay.
Or their version of paper, right? This was due also to a semi-mythical emperor named Shen Nong, or Divine Farmer. And no, I'm not kidding.
Divine Farmer?
Divine Farmer.
That's such a cute name.
I know.
So it was due to Divine Farmer's reign that they farmed so much cannabis.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's so cool.
I know, right?
And very multi-purposeful.
Very multi-purposeful indeed. Well, we also know that cannabis was used as a topical application for inflammation in Egypt as well.
Wow, that makes sense.
Yes, and I think it's also treated or used to treat for glaucoma.
Really?
Yeah, I know. It was first mentioned in the Ebers Papyrus, written around 1500 BC.
Papyrus?
Yeah.
It's interesting because we just saw, not last week, but the week before. Yes, I'm going to mention Outlander again.
Oh my god.
Remember when, this isn't a big spoiler for anyone that's like not caught up, but Claire offers an older woman with, I think, glaucoma, some hemp flower to
Yes.
smoke for the pain.
Yes,
Yeah.
and a big misnomer, hemp is basically the same thing as cannabis.
Yeah.
It's just like a lower, I think, THC or something like that.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, which is the psychoactive ingredient.
So it's been used for pain and inflammation for a very long time.
Very long time, like literally since ancient times.
Which is what, like, all of those very, like, bougie, wellness products are now, right? You get all those lotions and things to help with inflammation. And it's just been around for forever.
They're just knocking off 3,500-year-old, like, Egyptian bombs.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Exactly what they're doing.
We've caught on.
And medically, cannabis was also mentioned in Assyrian clay tablets.
Oh, wow.
Especially used to combat depression, which is, I'm kind of shocked that depression was even known, or whatever the ancient equivalent was, like, in the, like, known world, let alone even discussed.
My mind literally was just blown.
I know. I tried to find more, like, research into that, but it seemed, I mean, again, like, a lot of what we know about Assyria is from fired clay tablets, and, those, typically, the way you get fired clay tablets is through destruction, through fires. So
not a lot, but that's fascinating.
Right.
At the very least, that tells us they had some knowledge of mental health, of, like, this idea that our moods need help.
Right.
Sometimes, and then they also found, this plant helps with your mood.
Yes.
That's incredible to me.
I know, right?
Because we're just now doing that again.
Yeah, we're kind of like catching up to ancient times, literally. And get this, it's even possibly mentioned in the Odyssey.
What?
Yeah, so written, for everyone that doesn't know, it was written around the 8th or 7th centuries BC. Zeus's daughter Helen served wine mixed with a drug named Nepenthes that quiets all pain and strife and brings forgetfulness of every ill. Helen served this mixture to Greek soldiers who had painful reminiscences of their comrades slain during the Trojan War.
They had PTSD.
Yeah, they had PTSD.
And she was treating their PTSD with weed.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. This is possible. It's not like guaranteed that this Nepenthes is cannabis or anything, but it's strongly like thought, at least.
It sounds a lot like it.
It does, yeah. Especially for the forgetfulness part.
Yeah.
So our earliest mentions of the plant being especially burned and subsequently inhaling like the fumes comes from one of my favorite historians of all time, Herodotus.
Yes, you love him.
I love Herodotus. He detailed how Scythians, after a king's burial, would prepare small chambers that are like hermetically closed with woolen blankets, and then they laid on 3 posts sloping towards each other. The participants would crawl, under these blankets, throw hemp seeds onto the red-hot stones, and are, quote-unquote, delighted by the fragrant smoke, and then they would howl with pleasure.
So they would hotbox
Yes.
a tent.
They invented hotboxing.
They invented hotboxing, and this was for funerals?
Yeah, especially, like, specifically a king's funeral.
Wow.
Right.
That's quite a send-off.
It is a send-off indeed.
If I go first,
No! Oh my
do this at the funeral.
Okay. Well,
In
I guess
honor
we
of
have
the
to.
Scythians.
Okay, in honor of the Scythians. I do like steppe culture. It was quite interesting.
That is amazing. They would just
Yeah.
hotbox and then, yeah, I'm sure they'd howl with pleasure. I feel like howl with pleasure means like they got
Laughing.
They got the giggles.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
They would just be cracking up
Yes.
at probably everything.
Also, I just love like 2,500-year-old accounts of this. It's
Yes.
it's so funny.
It's amazing.
Yeah. This is actually backed up by archaeologists.
Oh, snap.
Yes, I know. One of the artifacts within ancient Sogdian burial sites.
Okay.
Sogdia is kind of just like near the stands as
Okay.
well. Just I can go into it more, but I'm not going to. Well, in these Sogdian burial sites, there was a wooden brazier, which was essentially like a piece of wood with a hole in the middle that would be stuffed with plant, the plant, and hot stones. So kind of like an early vaporizer.
What?
Yeah.
That's insane.
I just love humanity's ingenuity to get high. It's really funny.
I agree. People will do anything to get high.
Yeah, and like the ones that have been found at least have been carbon dated to around 500 BC, which lines up with Herodotus's writings.
Yeah.
He wrote only slightly after that.
That's incredible.
I know, right? Even the Romans knew about the plants and were connoisseurs in its effect.
You know, the Romans knew how to party.
They really did. The Romans were very just like, they were awesome. I mean, there's a reason they're my favorite like culture.
Yeah.
Right? They're just Romans. I mean, it's like, is it basic? Yes, but is it wrong? Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
They invented work hard, play hard.
That they did. Oh my god, they really did. So they were really big into plants and herbs, just in general. And in fact, they used the silphium plant to such an extent that it actually went extinct.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's a story for another time. I don't want to get into it, but yeah, just know
They loved plants.
They love plants.
Okay.
That's the key takeaway here. Cannabis, however, has been written about at least 3 times in different Roman encyclopedias that we know of. So this was like in the 1st and 2nd centuries.
Wow.
Yeah. The one that's I think most interesting was the last one. The 2nd century Roman physician Galen wrote that it was customary in Italy to serve small cakes containing marijuana for dessert.
Ancient Romans and frat boys everywhere are serving pot brownies.
Yeah, like he's basically saying, oh yeah, like we invented like edibles.
Edibles.
Yeah, they literally, like Romans invented edibles.
That's incredible.
Not your hipster down the street on Venice Boulevard. No. 2nd century Romans.
It's not surprising even a little bit.
It's really not. He also remarked that the seeds create a feeling of warmth, and if consumed in large amounts, would affect the head by emitting a warm and toxic vapor.
Nice.
Yeah, so it sounds like a good time.
It also sounds like it's a lot less strong than an edible dessert today.
I think that is true, yes.
Yeah, because obviously now we have all this science to make them super strong and
right.
all of those things. Because he said if consumed
in large amounts.
In large amounts, you'd feel it in your head.
Right, and I think back in the day, they didn't understand, like, you know, chemical compounds and stuff like that, nearly to the extent that we do today.
That's really interesting.
They were ahead of their time, but not, you know, quite like modern day.
Yeah,
to say the
not
least.
In every regard.
You know, suffice to say, it's been around, you know, cannabis has been around in use for many, you know, across thousands of years, different cultures. Mm-hmm. So quite a long time. And obviously, the story doesn't really stop here, but if I were to give a full account of weed, we would be here for weeks. So, sure. And I just don't want to do that, honestly. Yeah. Sorry, listeners, but you're not going to listen to me for weeks on end. And if you wanted to do that, then that would be weird. I'm not going to lie.
Even too weird for us.
Even too weird for us. So I'm going to skip ahead to about 400-ish years ago. Okay. And I'm going to focus mainly on the Americas from here on out, just because we're Americans and most of our listeners are from the good old US of A. So I think that just makes the most amount of sense. So English colonies, English colonists in the Americas had been growing hemp going back to essentially the beginning of English colonization. Okay. So it's been around for a very long time. In fact, the first laws surrounding cannabis in, you know, what would be the United States was not its prohibition, was actually requiring people to grow it. Colonists to grow hemp or marijuana specifically. Okay. Because its uses were very varied.
I mean, like, obviously, rope, paper, medicine.
And again, this has been known for literally thousands of years at this point. This is not new information. Yeah. And yes, you heard me correctly. It's to actually grow it. It was mandated that you had to grow it. In 1619, the Virginia Assembly passed legislation requiring that all farmers grow hemp, regardless of what you grew. Okay. And some states even traded hemp as legal tender.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so or I should say colonies, not states. But yeah, colonies at this time. And this is a far cry from like the devil's lettuce mania of like the 30s to 50s. This continued to be normal practice. And starting in the 1840s, so jumping ahead a little bit again, cannabis became widely accepted in the American medical community and was pretty much just available anywhere in the form of like over-the-counter products. In 1850, marijuana was even added to the U.S. pharmacopoeia I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right.
Oh, yeah, but
Pharmacopoeia.
like the encyclopedia, basically, for pharmacy.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And was specifically listed as a treatment for opioid withdrawal, pain, appetite stimulation, and relief of nausea and vomiting.
Yes.
So, like, literally the same that it would be like today.
Yes, that's why. Oh my God, an opioid withdrawal, because opioid withdrawal is intense, you guys.
Yeah.
It's really painful, so that makes sense. It would help ease the suffering of that.
Yeah.
And opioids were obviously used a little too willy-nilly then and now.
Yeah. Some things really don't change.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So, starting in the 1900s is where our like older notion of marijuana really starts coming into play. And what I mean by older is like, you know, from like the 90s and stuff.
Yeah, so like the modern.
Yeah, like I guess modern is now acceptance again, but like right before like today's like knowledge of it. So in 1906, the FDA, or the Food and Drug Act, required that any product containing cannabis be labeled appropriately, right? Mm-hmm. On the surface, that's not a bad thing. In fact, it's probably a good thing, right? Transparency in medicine is generally considered pretty good.
Yeah, people should know what they're consuming.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
However, like this had some unintended consequences. So the first being like, and to give you a little bit of backstory, in the first 3 decades of the 20th century in the United States, saw large waves of Mexican immigrants, many of whom would use marijuana recreationally.
Yeah.
Because it became associated with Mexican immigrants specifically, people began to fear cannabis, with anti-drug campaigners referring it to as quote unquote the Mexican menace.
Wow, that is messed up.
Yeah, maybe I should call you the Mexican menace.
That's my new nickname.
That's your new nickname.
My luchadora nickname.
Yeah.
That is also not surprising, and yet
Right.
still very disappointing to hear.
Exactly.
And it's funny because as you were discussing the Americas, I was thinking, I'm sure in Mexico they were using this for medicinal and recreational purposes as well. Yeah. And it's so nice that, you know, prejudice strikes again.
They're like, hey. And so one of the effects of this is like the first wave of like anti-marijuana, anti-drug, I guess, sentiment, I suppose, is the best way to put it. Propaganda. There we go. Between 1914 and 1925, 26 states passed laws prohibiting marijuana.
And it's because of its association with immigrants, with people of color, with foreigners.
Yep.
Lovely.
Exactly. So, in fact, by 1936, every single state had at least some restrictive laws against cannabis. Every single one.
That's so interesting that it just dominoed that quickly.
So quickly, yeah. In the matter of like, I mean, literally like less than 40 years.
After thousands of years of use.
Yeah, but it's like, oh no, these Mexicans. Mm-hmm. It's terrible. But it also... What didn't help, in that year, the movie Reefer Madness was released.
Shut up.
Which, by the way, if you haven't seen it, it's hilarious to modern day audiences, but would have been like terrifying to audiences in 1936. The movie implied that the drug could lead to violence, rape, suicide, and psychosis.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Have you seen parts of it?
So I've seen parts of it. It's hilarious.
Reefer Madness.
It's part of the public domain if I recall correctly. So you can just watch it.
That's also a really good band name.
Reefer Madness. I'm sure someone's
done it.
Yeah.
Darn it.
I know. That would be really cool.
I would totally start a punk rock band just so I could name it Reefer Madness.
Oh, yep. And well, yeah, going on with the story, nothing fun here. It's just kind of like, it's just a little depressing from like here on for like quite a while. But starting in the 1930s, the media began publishing quote unquote reports that marijuana was linked to increases in crime and violence, which to us in the present day is ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. And it was also around this time that Harry Anslinger, commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, began to campaign to criminalize marijuana, claiming that it led to insanity. And you kind of said this, but I want to reiterate this. All of this was honestly just very thinly veiled racism.
Right.
Or prejudice.
They're saying it's this group of people or groups of peoples, you know, that use it, and we associate those humans with crime, with insanity, with low morals, and therefore we're demonizing this plant
Exactly.
to further demonize these human beings.
Pretty much, yeah. I think that's a good summary.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's very thinly veiled. That's nuts that it that this narrative really took on and
in such a very short amount of time, especially in the
Yeah.
grand scheme of like how long it's been around.
You'd think people would be like, what? That's so dumb.
Yeah.
But no.
I know.
How sad. Okay, tell us more
Yes.
sad things.
More sad things.
Mm-hmm.
In the 1940s, marijuana was removed from the pharmacopoeia, and doctors began to discredit the drug for not having any medical uses.
The same doctors who were probably taught that it did.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nuts.
But not all doctors were on board with this. In 1944, the New York Academy of Medicine published a report stating that marijuana was only a mild intoxicant.
Right.
Our friend Harry Anslinger,
Oh my
and
God.
I don't mean he's actually my friend, in case you guys didn't pick up on
It's
that.
a sarcastic friend.
Sarcastic friend responded to this report with a solicited article in the American Journal of Psychiatry that attempted to attack and discredit the information the New York Academy of Medicine had previously published. Obviously, I think he probably, in the short term, at least won, it sounds like. Especially how we know, or what's going to transpire. However, in the procession of how the drug was viewed culturally, this was honestly just a blip, right? In 1952, the Boggs Act was passed, creating strict mandatory punishments for offenses involving marijuana. Then, of course, the 60s happened, and it gained popularity amongst, the hippies, beatniks, anti-war protesters, and just generally free-spirited folks. According to a variety of sources, they generally believe that the drug produced a harmless high, which,
Oh my God, especially then.
Yeah.
It's probably such weak stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, today we know that that's pretty much true. President JFK and Vice President Lyndon Johnson commissioned reports that found that marijuana did not induce violence or lead to the use of other more dangerous drugs, essentially backing up these beliefs held by the hippies. Yeah.
I didn't know that about JFK.
Yeah, so I know he was assassinated, I think, in 63, if I recall correctly. So this was the early 60s that these reports found no, this is what we know today. It does not lead to harder drug use, and it is generally pretty safe.
Right, it doesn't produce violence. If anything, make you really sedentary.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of violence. If anything, I think one of the bad things is it makes you it's not. I mean, it's not being non-violent is a bad thing, but it makes you so just not productive.
Yeah, you're a couch potato.
Yeah, exactly. You're a couch potato
that threatens no one.
Yeah, that's the worst thing about it.
It's a threat to your own productivity.
Yes, exactly.
But we've all heard of people who use it, or we've all heard. We live in California, so we've definitely heard of people who use it to be productive or to go work out.
Right.
I don't know how that works.
I don't know how that works, but yes, some of my friends do that, and I'm that's crazy to me. But good for them. 1970 rolled along, and this is where it takes a really bad turn. So Congress passes the Controlled Substances Act that places cannabis as a Schedule I drug alongside heroin and LSD. This had, of course, disastrous consequences.
Heroin.
Yeah, heroin.
My friends, my weirdos, heroin is much more intense than marijuana.
In case you guys didn't know.
In case you didn't know. It's very, very addictive. Very hard to be in remission from that addiction. It is not like eating a pot brownie or something.
Yes, seriously.
They are not even on the same planet.
No.
That is insane to hear.
Yeah, so this was obviously not backed up by science, and you'll see that in a second. But according to the act, marijuana had no medicinal value and had a high potential for abuse, giving it harsher criminal penalties. This law also made it difficult for doctors and scientists to study marijuana and its many uses. There was, again, in no way in my mind that this rationale wasn't at least racially motivated.
Absolutely.
There's very little evidence. There's no evidence, essentially, that this is true. I mean, and in fact, actually, interestingly, almost immediately, Oregon, Maine, and Alaska decriminalized the drug. And in 1972, the Schaefer Committee recommended that personal use of marijuana be decriminalized, but President Richard Nixon ignored that recommendation.
Oh my God. He was so freaking annoying. For so many reasons.
But yeah, that was one of them. And the anti-cannabis movement just really only gained ground in the 80s to the early to mid-90s. Nancy Reagan's Just Say No campaign started in 1982. Oh, you just rolled your eyes.
I have quite a few words for Miss Nancy Reagan. Quite a few words that are not podcast professional words.
We'll just move on. Dare followed suit in the next year, 1983. I know.
No.
If you're a millennial, you know about Dare.
You remember Dare.
Where police, and if you don't, well, this is where police officers would come to schools to speak about the dangers of drugs, and in particular marijuana, which is ironic given that that's probably the most chill drug.
Yeah.
Obviously, like if you're a teenager, it can like hinder your brain development, so of course it's bad and you should not do it, but like, you know, there are worse ones out there.
I mean, a lot have argued, and this is just through my experience, like working in mental health and working in a hospital setting, there's definitely research coming out about how much more beneficial and less harmful marijuana is than alcohol.
Oh yeah.
And alcohol is legal, you know, and it wasn't I mean, for a little while I guess it was morally looked down upon, but very, very interesting to me how differently these drugs have been treated. Yeah. Also, I mean, Steffi's not saying that also that you should drink. I mean, I drank when I was like in my teenage years, but I definitely I know before I was 21. We are never, ever, ever endorsing that any minors do anything.
Yes.
We're not talking to you, minors.
Yeah, minors, like, no. This is for people who are like 22 plus.
Yes. For you, do what feels good for you.
Yeah. And minors, like, study.
Yeah. Don't
drink. Don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you'll die.
Yeah. I guess you need to be prepared to die.
That's a really good summary of Dare.
Yeah, seriously.
Don't do these things or you'll die.
Well, speaking of Dare, funding would eventually be cut because, unsurprisingly, this program did nothing to curb substance use. So, in 1986, President Ronald Reagan signed the Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which gave even stricter penalties on cannabis possession and even instituted minimum sentencing.
Don't even get me started on Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, that's a
slippery slope for me.
Yeah, I know. Man, that's just disappointing.
It's so disappointing. Why stricter?
I know.
Get out of here, dude.
Well, it's funny, too, because even despite, the new war on drugs started by G.H.W. Bush, the public perception on cannabis would eventually turn. In 1996, this is when we start going kind of back into, like, how I guess we view it today. California voters approved Proposition 215 or 215, which legalized cannabis use for medical purposes at the state level, being the first state to do so.
Good job, California.
Good job, California.
Oh my God, all the people that must have helped.
Right.
People with chronic illness, people undergoing cancer treatment.
Exactly.
My goodness.
I know. And then many states over the next 25 years would follow suit. And in 2014, Colorado became the first state to fully legalize cannabis.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I do too.
And since this might be a little bit confusing for non-Americans, and to be honest, a lot of Americans as well, marijuana is still illegal at the federal level and is still a Schedule I drug, the worst designation possible.
And there are still people who are incarcerated for marijuana-related crimes.
Right. In states where it is fully legal, like California, Colorado, etc. Yes, I know this is confusing, and honestly, it doesn't make sense, but when have you ever known the federal government to be logical? Yeah. So, there we go.
So it's right now, for anyone who isn't here in the U.S., it's like a state-by-state thing. So
exactly.
You might be, our state, it's legal, California, but other states, it may not be. And then, like Andrew said, technically in the country, it's not legal.
Yeah, like overall, and if you go to federal buildings, it's illegal, even if you're in California, let's just say.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's it's kind of a wide range, right? You have everything from it's fully illegal in that state to California where it's fully legal, and then you have states where it's only legal like with certain percentages of THC, and
Yes,
then like
that's right.
certain other states it's like it's only medically legal. It's very confusing.
It is very
silly.
confusing. It really depends on where you're at, what the criteria are.
Yeah.
And it's super different, and most of the time it's honestly pretty stupid and
Right.
pretty random.
Yes, that's exactly
Yeah.
that's exactly how it is. And of course, like it's our stupidity and randomness has kind of permeated to the entire world, which is unfortunate. And
Yeah. So unfortunate. It's so contagious.
yes, exactly. I will also point out, like, kind of a quick aside. I know starting in the 14th century, a lot of Islamic traditions started to ban, cannabis.
Okay.
But for like religious reasons.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like because alcohol was already banned.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, they
I
don't
disagree
wanna-
with it. Don't get me wrong, but it makes sense at
It's
least.
consistent because the point is to not alter your perception of
Right.
this life, and I completely understand that. And it's consistent versus here, as we see, it's very inconsistent and not backed by logic
At all.
at all.
They don't even try, honestly. And okay, there you have it, folks. That's pretty much a brief-ish synopsis of the story of cannabis, marijuana, hemp, Mary Jane, etc., etc. And I hope that you notice that in the Western world, at least, cannabis has really only been criminalized in the past 100-ish years or so, despite being used by humanity since like literally prehistory. So,
Damn.
yeah,
That's
there
a
you
good
go.
summary right there.
I hope you guys caught that. Mm-hmm. So, as for my sources, we have the National Library of Medicine, specifically an article labeled "The History of Cannabis and the Endocannabinoid System." Oh my god, I butchered that word. Recovery.org, Science.org, and Wikipedia.
There you go.
Yeah.
That was awesome, babe. That was really good information.
Thank
I
you.
learned a lot. I got real angry at the end. Had to hide my rage. But it was really, really good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And obviously, like all of the things that we talked about that are still very backwards and very biased, I hope continue to change for the better. And again, this is we are never gonna be like, you should be doing this drug or whatever.
Right.
But it's just a really interesting history.
Yes.
And you're right, like a very controversial topic as of late.
Yes,
Like
as of late, like at least in the Western world, like this has only come up in the last 100 years. Like before that, for 10,000 years,
Not
plus,
controversial.
It's not controversial at all.
That is insane. That was
Yes.
really good.
Yeah, thank you. Well, guys, that's it. If you guys want to reach us, you can always email us at historyforweirdos@gmail.com or on our Instagram at historyforweirdos.
And all of that information is always in our show notes as well.
Exactly. And please, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to us. I know most of our listeners are Spotify listeners, so you can absolutely subscribe to us, and and also rate and share with your friends, because that really helps the podcast grow.
Yes, we love it. We appreciate it so much. Like, you all have helped us grow quite a bit.
So much.
So much. And we are just so honored, and we hope to keep producing content that you all love. So also, just let us know what more you'd like to hear.
Absolutely. Until next time, weirdos.
Thanks, weirdos.
Adios.
We all know a guy who only occasionally shaves for big occasions, and it's because that occasional shave really hurts. It's the time of year for big occasions, and yet there he is, suffering with that cheap drugstore razor. Let's help him out. Henson Shaving's line of razors, built with aerospace precision, deliver a smooth shave your dad, brother, and even son can enjoy, eventually. With replacement blades just 10 cents each, you'll buy it once, and they'll use it for life. How's that for the perfect gift? Celebrate with 100 free blades on your first purchase, and no subscription headaches. HensonShaving.com/holiday.
Seeing is believing, and you're not going to believe how bright and vivid the colors are on the Samsung Neo QLED and OLED TVs powered by the Neural Quantum Processor. Because this is an audio ad. Unless you can see it, which means you already have one. Nice. Samsung. More wow than ever.